Hey, welcome everyone. This is Guy Gambit, the Social Tactician. In today's video, I'm going to go over one of my personal long-time favorites, how to game an art museum. Just like we've done before, on the whiteboard you'll notice on the right side, I have a diagram depicted of a typical art gallery room where we've got hallways to the top and hallways to additional rooms on the bottom, but we're going to focus in the diagram primarily on what to do within the room, the X's and O's of all this. And then on the left side, we have some things we got to cover before we dive into the diagram to get you ready. So like any large complex venue, you want to do a reconnaissance or a prep mission before you go there to game. Why? Well, quite simply, you've got to choose a museum that you want to do. And not all art galleries are created equal. What you'll find is in some art galleries, the art is very spread out along the wall and the floor plan is very open, and people walk around quietly, no one talking. You could literally hear a pin drop. That's not a good art gallery for game. Or in other art galleries, they'll have it where it's very modern and maybe it's very dark, and they'll have installations on the wall with music where it's lit up. Very interesting art, but not conducive to any type of social interaction amongst strangers. So you want to choose an art museum that embraces social interactions among the guests. You want it to facilitate that. Typically what you're talking about is an art gallery where the masses go, the most popular art galleries in that city. So once you've chosen the most popular art gallery that's going to support social interactions for the purposes of meeting women, you're going to choose the best 2 rooms within that museum. How do you choose? Well, usually it's going to be the most traveled 2 rooms and the rooms where people are going to linger the longest. Often they'll have a sofa or statues in them as well. Things that are going to make people stay in that room longer. Or it may just have the most popular artists. Which brings us to our next thing. In each room, you're going to choose an artist that you become an expert on. So 2 rooms is going to mean for 2 artists, you're going to become an expert on their art within that museum and some facts about their life that the women that you have the social interaction with are going to find interesting. I don't want you to try and become an art historian where you think you have to walk around the whole museum and know something about every artist and could give a tour. I mean, if you want to do that, I guess that's fine. But for 2 artists, 1 in each room, you are going to become an expert on them. In one room, I'm choosing Van Gogh. In another room, I'm choosing Jackson Pollock. Why those 2 artists? Because they're both very popular, very interesting. Their lives are kind of tragic, but kind of romantic, and it's very easy to talk about love and passion and even death with those artists. Things that we call chick crack topics that the women are going to find interesting. Don't pick an artist whose art is dark and medieval style and looks like it belongs in Count Dracula's castle unless you specifically want to date a goth girl. And those are few and far between. So what I recommend is sticking to the popular artists that we all know women find interesting. The Van Goghs, the Monets, the Manets, the Renoirs, the Cézannes, like all those impressionists and post-impressionists, women find them very romantic and it's very easy to talk about them. So become an expert on 2 artists. Now, the type of girl that we're going to interact with, we want to look for single tourist girls, girls who are there by themselves. We want to stay away from tour groups because they're on a fixed schedule. And even if you got her attracted to you, it's very difficult for anything to happen. She has to leave when the group leaves and stay on their schedule. But with the single tourist girl, what you're going to find is the girl who's traveling by herself and is in that art museum, A, she's interested in art, and B, she's only here for a few days, maybe 1 day, maybe 2 days. And the majority of those type of girls have a fantasy of meeting an interesting, charismatic, handsome guy who just popped up out of nowhere and seems to know a lot about art. And wow, she feels so attracted to him that it just leads to drinks later and then back to her place or his place. Like, this is a true fantasy for many, many women, but if she's in the art museum traveling by herself, more likely than not, it's a fantasy for her. So we want to be that guy. To get that girl, we're going to do indirect cold approach method. It could be mystery method. It could be Todd Valentine. It could be Shawn Michael with 3SR. It could be James Marshall at the Natural Lifestyles. Many different people teach indirect cold approach. Bottom line, you're not going to go direct. You're not going to show a direct man to woman interest in the museum because it's not appropriate. It's not socially calibrated. Speaking of which, 3 variables are going to determine in the museum whether someone would say you were doing good game. The first thing is you're going to look congruent in that museum. Looking congruent means you look like you belong in an art museum looking at art. You're going to be well dressed, the same as every guy in there, and maybe a +1 or even a +2. Then you're going to be holding a map. Why? Because anybody who's in the museum for the first time and walking around, they're going to be looking at the map trying to figure out where to go. So you're well dressed and you're carrying a map and well groomed. Then you're going to be socially calibrated. Socially calibrated is we're going to find that in every room, as people enter a room and walk around, they generally look at the art that's on the wall on the perimeter and then they flow into the next room. You are going to stay in the flow. Someone who breaks the flow or does something weird, like they choose to just lay down here in the middle, immediately it's not socially calibrated. It doesn't make sense. So you're going to see how when we teach this, everything you do is going to be socially calibrated. Your displayed behaviors have to look like they belong in the museum. Then the interaction is going to be authentic. An authentic interaction has to feel like it's not contrived or pre-planned in any way. It just happened spontaneously. It's a real interaction. This can be a problem because the more you do this, the amount of knowledge and skills that you build up for an art museum will become an iceberg. And if you reveal too much of the iceberg to the girl during the interaction, she's going to feel like it's inauthentic. You're too good. You know too much. So the saying I came up with is just give them the tip. You should have an iceberg of skills and techniques and knowledge about the art gallery and the artists and how to do this. But always for the girl, just give her the tip. And in that way, it's going to feel authentic. One other pro tip on how to be authentic is, since you've picked 2 rooms and you're going to meet a girl in one room and eventually you decide, oh, hey, let me show you something cool. And now you're going to lead her over to another room. During that movement from room 1 to room 2, you're not going to try and game her. You're just going to make random small talk. Hey, so where are you from? Oh, wow. What do you think about this town? Oh, how long are you here for? But whatever small talk you want. It can be the weather. Doesn't matter. But it just needs to be not gamey. By doing all this, the reconnaissance, becoming an expert on 2 artists, knowing the type of girls you're going to target, using the right method in the right way, being authentic in the interaction, you, my friend, are going to be the value in the art museum. What this does is it gives you that best feeling in the world when you're in your car driving to the art museum and it's the 12th time you've gamed it. You realize, I am the best guy she can meet at this art gallery. I'm the most interesting, the most cool, the most fun, the most knowledgeable, the most handsome, the most well-dressed. I truly am the value. In this way, in that art museum, in that setting, your social anxiety is basically 0, which means you're going to game very well. Competence breeds confidence. So when you're fully competent, how can you not help but be confident? Okay, I think we're ready for the diagram. So in this example, I happen to be an expert about Van Gogh. The Van Goghs are along this wall. As people come in, they flow around the edge of the room looking at the art. Sometimes they make a complete circle and then go back out. Sometimes they make a half circle and go into the next room. So I'm going to position myself here. As I just flow around the room looking at the art, let's say I stop at the Van Goghs. And I notice a good-looking girl comes in and she's here. She's in the flow. She just enters the room. She's kind of looking around, trying to decide where to go. She's going to stay in the flow. She's going to look at the first art, then the second art, and then eventually she's going to go here. When she gets here to that third place, now I'm going to do my opener. You notice I didn't even approach her. I waited for her to come down to me. That's very important that it's socially calibrated and it makes the interaction feel completely authentic. So once she moves there, I'm going to say, hey, you seem interested in the details. Do you paint? She's going to say, blah, 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 blah. Funny. I thought I noticed something artistic about you. Her. Blah, 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 blah. What I've done here is notice I've used an opener where I talked about the art, then I pivoted to her. Then I talked about the art, then I pivoted to her. After that last response, then I would say something like, now that I'm talking to you, why do you look so like you're from New York City? Her. Blah, 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 blah. So, do you even like his work? Her. Blah, 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 blah. Funny. One thing I noticed about Van Gogh was he's different than everybody else. Her. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, in the last year of his life, I know he painted more than 100 paintings. I mean, who would do that? You would stop. I would probably stop. Our parents would tell us to go get a real job at Starbucks. But we keep painting. Like, why do that? Her. Blah, 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 blah. Love. Her. Blah, 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 blah. That's a typical interaction. Another opener you could use. So, are you a fan? Or so, I'm curious what you think. After the interaction, now you're in set with her. The set is hooked. You told the DHV story. She's going to be interested in you. Now you can move around the room with her. At some point, you're going to tell her, hey, let me show you something cool. And you're going to try and move her over to here, jumping out of the flow and just coming over, and you're going to show her something else and ask her, hey, I'm curious, what do you think of this one? This is basically testing. Is she willing to move around the museum with you? If she does, you're going to stay in set. You stay in set for as long as you can, or until she starts giving you signals like, hey, thanks, but I'm going to go look around the museum now by myself, etc. So that's how we game the first room. After you float around the museum, that room in room number 1 in the museum, again, you want to move her to the second room as a compliance test. You say, hey, let me show you something cool, and get her to follow you outside of the room to room 2, to the Jackson Pollock room. And then you're like, see, I knew you were going to like this one. Did you even know they had Jackson Pollocks here? Her. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, his life was crazy with all kinds of twists and turns. Her. Blah, 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 blah. Now that you say twists and turns, now you're going to pivot it to her. Hey, what about you? I think you've kind of been sheltered all your life. Have you had twists and turns? So what you're trying to do here is get it where if I talk about Van Gogh being passionate or that he painted because he loved it, if I say passion about the art, I'm going to say, what about you? What do you have something passionate like that? Or what are you passionate about like that? Or if I'm talking about love, I'm going to say, what about you? What do you love like that? Okay, we've talked about how to game an art museum. We've talked about how to move through the floor plan, how to move a girl from one place to the other and do small talk in between. So hopefully after I've gone over this, you're going to go find an art gallery and start working the art museum. And one day you too will be a social tactician. Now, this has been Guy Gambit. Get out there and be social.